And this is just devastating that I have to go through this for the rest of my life, and knowing I'll never have the embrace of my niece, the hey TT, what you doing? When you coming down here? You know, I'll never get to hear that from my baby again. And that's what kills me the most. I just wish that when I was down here last, that I had just taken her to Indianapolis with me.
Arrangements and all community donations that were made to the family are now being transferred to Dale Riggs Funeral Home. Kei'Mani's grandmother tells 13 Action News she is working on funeral arrangements now, but at this point, it's not clear if any of those services will be open to the public. The teen's mother tells us she believes she will not be invited.
I haven't received an invite, which is really upsetting. She's taken, my daughter's whole life from me. She's gotten a chance to be with my baby, and this tragedy is what came of it. I just want to be able to give my kid a good send-off, and I can't do that. She's not allowing me to.
Do you believe that Darnell acted alone, or is at the time right now, are you guys considering other suspects, or is there other people you guys are looking at?
We're always looking at the chance that there might be multiple people involved. I don't necessarily believe that or disbelieve that that's the case right now, but that is something that we will continue to run down through the investigations. There are statements that always...
She left glasses and keys. It ain't adding up. You know what I'm saying?
Does she have a cell phone?
Yeah, and it's going straight to voicemail.
Okay, all right.
And she tried to call me at 1:29, and then she called my girl like 5 other times. And the last call came in at 1:49. So she was trying to get in contact with somebody.
Mm-hmm. And so no one has had contact with her? Nobody saw her? Who was the last person to really see her?
It was me.
He is in that house, and my baby is deceased. I cannot wait to see it's done.
Kei'Mani Latigue was just days away from turning 14 years old when she was last seen in Toledo, Ohio on March the 16th, 2025. Kei'Mani had been living with her grandmother, Dorothy Latigue, for the past 5 years, and within the last year, Dorothy had gained legal guardianship of her. However, despite not having legal custody, according to Kei'Mani's biological mother, Tiara, she allegedly maintained parental rights and had been paying child support. After years apart, Kei'Mani and Tiara were recently reunited. On March the 15th, 2025, just one day before she was last seen, Kei'Mani's alleged father, Darnell Jones, drove her to visit her biological mother in Cleveland, Ohio. Kei'Mani and Darnell stayed there for a few hours before Dorothy requested that Kei'Mani return home. Darnell then took her back to her grandmother's house. The following evening, on March the 16th, Dorothy left for an overnight work shift, leaving Kei'Mani home alone. When she returned home on the morning of March the 17th, she found the house in disarray. The stove had been left on, filling the air with the strong smell of gas. Kei'Mani's glasses, which she needed to see, were left behind, something deeply concerning to her grandmother. Initially, authorities did not suspect any foul play despite Dorothy reporting the state of the home. The search for Kei'Mani began, and her alleged father, Darnell Jones, appeared to be deeply involved in the efforts. He helped distribute flyers and assisted authorities and the community in looking for her. Darnell initially provided what seemed to be critical information to investigators. He claimed that on the night of March the 16th, Kei'Mani called him in distress, saying she felt unsafe because someone was trying to enter the home. Concerned for her safety, Darnell said he went to check on her, bringing his cousin with him. He stated that they stayed for about an hour before leaving. Tragically, Kei'Mani was never seen or heard from again. Now, as the investigation progressed, inconsistencies in Darnell's statement began to emerge, leading police to suspect his involvement. Eventually, an arrest warrant was issued for him. However, by then, authorities learned that he had fled to Columbus, Ohio. After a week of intense searches, Kei'Mani's body was discovered in an abandoned home in Toledo on March the 24th, 2025. On March the 25th, 2025, authorities caught up with Darnell Jones in Columbus, Ohio. His girlfriend at the time had alerted authorities to his whereabouts, allowing police to zero in on him. When confronted, authorities report that Darnell attempted to fire at officers through his sweatshirt. Police immediately returned fire, critically injuring him. However, he is expected to survive. Authorities have reported that once Darnell is released from the hospital, he will formally face charges related to Kei'Mani's tragic death. While authorities have confirmed that Kei'Mani suffered a horrific death at the hands of her alleged father, further details are still emerging. Now, I have been closely following this case, and there are other videos on my page that provide more context, including an interview with Kei'Mani's biological mother, Tiara. If you're not familiar with the background of why her mother did not have custody, be sure to check out those videos. Following this case like I am, then you know that at this point there's more questions than answers. Now, there were speculation online that Dorothy, who is Kei'Mani's guardian as well as her grandmother, it's believed that she's the one who called the authorities to alert them that Kei'Mani's body was in the abandoned house. Now, a lot of people have said, how would she have known, and where did this originate from? Now, there was a comment that was posted, and what this person said was, my mom lives right there. Literally, that corner house where everybody was standing is the house that I grew up in. The detectives came to her door asking her if she had a camera. My mom identified the dad's vehicle, which is Darnell. He put her there at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm so heartbroken. From my understanding, they also have Dorothy on video scattering clothes all through the park, and she's the one that called it in that baby was in the house. So this is where that belief is coming from, the allegation that Dorothy took Kei'Mani's clothes and scattered them throughout the park, and she was involved in it. This is where this is coming from. And then what they're saying is that the mom caught it on camera of Darnell Jones putting Kei'Mani's body in the house, and Dorothy is the one who called the authorities and gave them the tip. So this is where that is coming from. How do you guys feel about that? The police chief, there was a question posed to him about the tip. Yesterday, I did post a video on my page. Well, the day before that video was there about the chief. He was answering questions. Now, at the time, the news station had only released the article, but they have now released the video, the interview. So I am going to play that. So please make sure you check that out. Now, in addition to that, there was another comment that was left, and this is what you guys need to pay attention to. This one is because it says, I went with a few people to search for her on the east side and ended up speaking with the dad's girlfriend. She was very distraught, and she told us she suspects foul play on his part. He and one of Dorothy's friends stated he left after an hour of setting with Kei'Mani because he works the graveyard shift. His girlfriend stated he does not have a job. He came home around 5 a.m. the night he went to set with his daughter and washed his truck from front to trunk, inside out. She fully cooperated with authorities and is fearful of her safety. Okay, so keep in mind that this person is saying that allegedly the girlfriend is said that Darnell Jones did not have a job. So this is where there were comments about, remember Tiara, the biological mom, Kei'Mani's biological mom, she had initially, she had did like a video, a live, and if you haven't heard it, it is in one of my previous videos, so you could check that out, where she was talking about that Darnell Jones didn't have any work boots, that, she didn't believe that he was involved in. A lot of people gave her backlash because the girlfriend said that he did have boots. But here, the reason why this comment comes up is because now Darnell Jones' girlfriend, who's now the ex-girlfriend, she's the one that led the authorities to the evidence. She has done a new interview. And in this new interview, she reveals that her and Darnell, they share a 3-year-old daughter. But what she also says is that Darnell was never violent towards her. According to her, he went to work every day. He would come home. He took care of the household. He never whooped the kids or yelled at them. And she says they never argued. She said when Kei'Mani first came up missing, they made it seem like she was a runaway. She said that she was thinking that they were looking for a runaway until they pulled the evidence out of her home. So up until that time, she said until they came to collect the evidence, she was thinking that Kei'Mani had voluntarily left home on her own. So, and she also goes on to state that it was her family that alerted her to Darnell hiding evidence there. So keep in mind that she previously did an interview on camera, but she did not want her face to be shown. So this time she did more of a question and answer session, interview style, where she wasn't on camera, but they printed the article, and this is what she's saying. And she's saying that he went to work. He came home every day. They didn't argue. Now, the reason why this is coming up is because recall that his girlfriend, that she previously said he does not have a job. So some people are starting to say that they believe that she's being dishonest because initially she said he didn't have a job, and now she's saying that he went to work every day. I will say this, I don't know how the news article posed a question to her, whether or not it was a broad question or whether or not it was like, tell us what your home life is. And she answered the question like, he went to work every day. Let me know, what are you guys' thoughts? Do you believe she was speaking in the present tense when she spoke with the news station and said he went to work every day? Do you guys believe that Darnell Jones was working? How do you feel now about this new interview where she's saying that Darnell Jones went to work every day? What are you guys' thoughts? And then she does go on to say in this interview, she's just saying that, she was the one that alerted the police to the evidence. And if it wasn't for her, they would not have found the evidence enough to charge him in the first place. If it wasn't for her, they wouldn't have found him at all. That the reason that they were able to find Darnell, according to her, is because Darnell called her from a text now number and she called it back. And then that person called her back and gave her their exact address and city they were in. And she called detectives so that they'll know exactly what neighborhood to search. So again, according to her, she's like, back off. And this is the second time now that she's done an interview. And she's like, leave me alone because I helped authorities. I led them to the evidence. I called to turn him in. But she does say that he did have a job. According to her, they had a good home life. They didn't really argue. She said they didn't argue at all, in fact. So what are you guys thinking about this? Now, I do want to state that in the same publication, there was a neighbor that said that, he knew Darnell and that Darnell did have a violent past from what they could recall when Darnell was previously married. In fact, they recalled that there was a time that Darnell actually was holding his wife over the balcony and attempting to choke her. So according to this neighbor, they said they all went on the front porch and they were watching the whole thing go down. You could hear it from right here, from the side of the porch, and that he had her over the balcony by her throat, and he was going to throw her off the balcony. She was screaming for her life. And that man was Darnell Jones. Now, although this neighbor describes Darnell in this fashion, keep in mind that his current girlfriend, who broke up with him after he, obviously she found that evidence. She's saying that was not her experience with Darnell Jones, that they didn't argue. Although he may have been violent towards his wife, she says she didn't experience that. And the news actually, posed the question to her if she was aware of his past, and she said no, she was not aware of his past. Another thing that has come up is because a lot of people are saying, why are people saying that he was involved, that Darnell Jones exchanged gunfire with the authorities? Well, several news stations have actually published articles to say that he exchanged gunfires with authorities. People and other news stations have actually said that. There was an arrest warrant that was reviewed by People, and the Toledo police alleged that Jones provided inconsistent statements to police about his activity with his daughter. Now, when Columbus police approached him on Tuesday, this is, on March the 25th, when all this went down, that Darnell allegedly attempted to shoot at an officer with a gun from inside his sweatshirt. So did you guys know that? That video is circulating. I'm not going to show it here, but that video is circulating online. Were you aware that Darnell attempted to shoot at the police officer and they returned fire against him? And when they returned fire against him, he was critically injured, but they did say that he is expected to survive. So were you aware that when Darnell approached the police officer that he attempted to fire his weapon?
Received a tip about the body that was found in that house. That's how you guys first found out about it being there, correct?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, actually. Which tip?
You guys received about the body being found on Miami Street in the house. There was a tip that you guys received, or was it anything in the report? It was mentioning that you guys were notified, and I believe it went to the detectives' work as well. There was communication and messaging through, was there a phone call or anything, or Crime Stoppers? Was there anything sent out? How did you guys find out about the body inside the house?
Through detective work, really. So, through some interviews and some investigating. At this time, I can't disclose why or how, because it's still very pertinent to the investigation. And at this point, we're not ready to talk about that aspect of it. But yes, it was our detectives doing a great job interviewing and investigating and following up on some leads that got us to that location.
Now, going to the body, when it was reported that it was found in the house, when lots of people found out and it spread in the community, people showed up very soon right after that while you guys were there doing your work. There are a lot of people live streaming on their phones, showing it and kind of just talking about it in general. There's a huge presence there. I mean, we saw it. I was there that day. Did that at all impact your guys' work there while you were doing that? Did it affect how you guys were doing? I mean, could you guys have done anything differently there if people weren't there, yelling, shouting, what?
No, obviously, anytime you add a little bit of chaos to a scene, that makes it a little bit harder for us to do our job. But, we're prepared for that. So we have officers that can contain the outer perimeter and make sure that no one gets in. And then our detectives, they're focused on their job. They're going to do their job whether there's people watching or not. So they're still going to be able to do it. It's just the outside officers being involved more and trying to maintain, as you just said, a very highly agitated scene for good reasons, right? But the reality is, it doesn't affect the investigation itself. It just makes it a little bit harder for the officers on the scene to maintain that perimeter.
Do you have any idea how many of your officers were out there that day?
I actually don't know how many we had deployed out there that day. I know we had a lot of detectives, roughly 10 to 12 detectives that were on scene. As far as the outer perimeter for the number of patrol officers on scene, I don't know that number.
Now, moving on to Darnell Jones, he's in the hospital currently, and that's where we're kind of at with that situation. But I know that yesterday you mentioned in an interview that you guys sent detectives down there for questioning. Has he confessed to anything? Has he confessed previously before then? What are you guys getting? So
we did send detectives down and interviewed him in his hospital room. We made progress there. So we have some things that we're going through at this point. Once we get all the information that he provided, that we've gathered, we'll meet with the prosecutors. We'll walk through that timeline with the prosecutors and decide with their guidance on the charges that will be filed. And then at that point, we'll talk about what charges are going to be out there, we'll release that information. But right now, we did talk to him. We are moving forward. I would say we're in a pretty good spot investigatively anyways on moving forward with this case.
Speaking of charges, on Monday, we read in a report that he was charged with third-degree felony of abduction. At this point, what charges are we still looking at? Do you happen to know? Is that charge still there, and is a murder charge as well?
So, as my understanding right now is the murder charge is added and the abduction charge is still there, but that's right now, those are the only charges that are out there. Obviously, as we work through all of the statements and all the leads that we have now, there may be additional charges.
Do you believe that Darnell acted alone, or is at the time right now, are you guys considering other suspects, or is there other people you guys are looking at?
We're always looking at the chance that there might be multiple people involved. I don't necessarily believe that or disbelieve that that's the case right now, but that is something that we will continue to run down through the investigations. There are statements that always conflict each other, and there's always kinds of things that need to be tied up in an investigation, and that's the phase we're in right now. So right now, we only have one person charged.
I know why you guys can't say what he told detectives yet. There was a lot of talk earlier about his statements not matching, which was said in a police report. There were a lot of inconsistent statements and stuff. The statement that he's given now, is it a bit clearer? You don't have to say the details of that. I know you guys are still working, but is it clearer?
I think we have a much better understanding of what happened. By far a lot more understanding after we talked to him. But at that point, that's about as much details I can give you on our conversation with him.
Do you think that, hearing from the community, this is a case we've seen the social media very, very present with a lot of comments and sometimes mispeculation and misinterpretation, misinformation, a lot of that being spread out there in social media, people saying he was found before he was even found, Do you guys wish maybe you would have communicated a little earlier about this case, or do you guys wish you would have had a press conference or something?
So there was nothing that we could have done in a press conference. We did a press release or a news release from the department, and our detective bureau did as well. And then our detective, our lieutenant in charge of the investigations, was on scene that day and actually gave an interview that day. There's nothing else that we could have done in a press conference. We gave out that information. We waited on the press release from the coroner. Those are different things that we do that give out details. A lot of times, and up until, he was arrested, there wasn't a lot of information we could put out. And so at that point, a press conference is not really going to accomplish anything. We were giving out as much information as we could. Social media is going to be social media, and people are always going to speculate and run with their own theories. And unfortunately, we can't control that. But the reality is, most things you read on social media, especially early, probably aren't even true.
Speaking of that and social media, is there any rumors right now regarding this case that you want to dispel right now that you can think of, like, hey, this is the fact?
I can't think of anything out there on social media right now. I try to avoid it as much as I can. So I don't have anything really right now that I would say, hey, stop listening to that because it's not true. And really, it's probably too early for us to even address some of those issues.
There is a lot of things going on in this case and a lot of details and things being looked at. We know that you guys are still investigating, but in terms of how long you think you guys are getting closer to the answer and closer to a conclusion, how long do you think this is going to take or play out?
Unfortunately, that's very hard to speculate. There is a lot involved in this case. Obviously, we're talking about two different cities being involved. We're talking about, we have a week of things that happened, right? So we are working the case as fast as we can. As I said before, I think we're in a really good place investigatively, and I think as soon as we can button everything up and run down every lead, last thing we want to do is be premature in our charges or premature in saying this is the only suspect we have, we're good. We don't like to do that. We like to make sure we investigate everything out there, so when we do take this to trial, there is no room for doubt.
Speaking of that, you guys are reactionary, right? I mean, when there's trouble in the city, you guys are the ones called and you guys come in. But looking at this case and just looking in general, Is there anything that the community can do with things like this or with situations like this that help prior to you guys having to come out and do something?
Oh, absolutely. So our community knows their neighborhood better than any police officer can possibly know it, right? So no matter how many hours we spend in the neighborhood, there's things that we will never hear or never see that other community members or family members are seeing. So if there's ever any doubt in anybody's minds about any, so let's take this case, right? So if you ever have any doubt that some child is being abused or something is just not right, then by all means notify.
Days since Kei'Mani's body was found in a vacant house. This morning, our cameras were out there as crews were cutting the utilities to the property. And since then, all of these people who've been leaving items outside for that memorial, they've also moved that memorial. Father, Darnell Jones, is charged with her murder. He is still in Columbus, recovering in a hospital after a confrontation with Columbus police officers. He will need to be booked and arraigned there for that incident before he is extradited to Toledo. As of tonight, we still do not have a timeline as
The murder of Kei'Mani Latigue prompted this review of Lucas County Children's Services with the ultimate hope that there's never another case like hers, by reviewing the entire operation at Children's Services.
You got to start where you start, and it's going to go where it goes.
Lucas County Commissioners formally approved that review Tuesday morning, a review that could take 9 to 10 months. Once a scope is determined, public hearings will be held. Already, commissioners and the committee have heard stories from the public.
The community has reached out to us on lots of levels about people want to be engaged in this and they want to give their stories, and we're going to organize around that.
Commissioner Pete Gerken says no one knows what the review will bring back to the commissioners. He was asked what happens if, for example, the committee says it still needs something like 50 new caseworkers.
It goes where it goes. I'm not going to prejudge or pre-cost anything. I don't know that yet. That may happen, but I'm not going to answer questions that are hypothetical.
There was not any thought of there was a family kidnapping or family being involved or any foul play at that point. At this point, we had a lot of different stories about a missing 13-year-old that may or may not have ran away for different reasons. So at that time, we'd already interviewed all the family members and we were talking to everybody. So there was nothing that would have qualified for an Amber Alert or that actually an Amber Alert would have done for the investigation.
In the case of Kei'Mani Latigue, Ohio State Highway Patrol says they were not contacted about her case. Toledo Police Chief Mike Trenley says they determined it did not meet requirements. But what about an endangered child alert?
Obviously, it's a missing child, a runaway, lost. It's not actually witnessed. It's not a confirmed abduction. The child is missing with circumstances that are unknown.
We can verify the circumstances around when Kei'Mani Latigue first went missing did not meet the criteria for an Amber Alert.
Just got done with basically what my lawyer told me to do. Had to get a drug evaluation, you guys. And guess what? It feels good to be clean. I'm clean. My drug test says negative. What's inside your system? Nothing. Damn, I just now noticed this. You hear me? I just now noticed that. Who's on my live? Say hi. Ain't the best day, but it's a day.